Uh, so it's 5:33, and we will call the meeting to order and then confirm who is here. So I think the way it works on the Zoom is we go through the names, right, Mark? Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, Jessica. Yeah, unfortunately, just because it is being recorded, but yeah, just go through the names and questions have come up. Like because we're on video, do we need a formal roll call on each vote? And the answer is yes. So thanks.
No problem. Okay, Jessica Bass.
Present.
Roger St. Amand.
Present.
Carrie Hayes. Okay, it appears Carrie is not with us yet. And then we know that Heidi is going to join us shortly. Are you taking notes, Jandria, or someone from afar?
I am taking notes, and Daniel Horning usually takes notes too. He just isn't part of this meeting. He's just watching usually, and then he takes the minutes for us at this point now. So I take down some basic stuff in the event that Daniel isn't there, but he usually is taking the notes for us and submits them to Selena after these meetings.
Jessica, also, if we ever have to, the meeting's recorded too and archived on YouTube. So anything we have to go back and get, we can. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Approval of voucher via DocuSign. I know that it went around. I signed it. I assume everyone signed it. So next we have approval of minutes from 14 January 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Or I move to approve the minutes as written or submitted.
Is there a second?
This is Roger. I will second that.
Any discussion? Okay. If not, then I guess we'll go through the roll call again. So Jessica Bass.
Approve.
Roger St. Amand.
Approve.
And it looks like, and I approve, Jessica. Okay. And we have no public comment yet, as we just heard, and we'll wait. Well, we circle back to that at the end. If Heidi has received any public comment, we can address that. So that brings us on to reports and updates. So I think that's Jandria to take it away with the principal's report.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jessica. So just starting by taking a look at enrollment, we did gain a couple of students just recently, and that does not include our the figure that you see there does not include our homeschool students. We have approximately 10 homeschool students this year. And so we've gone up a couple of kids recently. The last meeting we had some registrations that were pending, and so those have gone through. And then we've had a couple of kids actually that have transitioned out recently. But we tend to stay pretty consistent. If we had everybody in person this year, those numbers would look very much the same as where we've been in the past couple of years. So in terms of what's going on here at Tremont right now, I just want to really make it clear that, and again, I hope to be able to show this in some sort of a presentation soon, but overall, I would say our students are really doing well right now. They're happy. They're really engaged in what's going on here at school right now. And we are seeing that students are making growth, which is a really positive thing. There's a lot of concern right now around students falling behind. And I don't want to speak too soon because we're in the middle of collecting some data at this time of year. We are doing NWEA testing and various assessments and whatnot. So I'm really interested to see what that data shows. But, just what we would typically be seeing from students right now in terms of how they're handling things at school and in the classroom and whatnot, it looks very similar to what we would have seen in the past. Again, we'll get an update on data before too long and have some new assessments. So that will be great to see. But I just want people to really understand that I think the fact that we've been able to be in person in school as much as we have been has been a real bonus. And we're continuing to talk more and more here at Tremont just about what we can keep doing to just kind of keep people's spirits up and trying to plug in little things here and there where we can do that. And I'll talk about PTO in a few minutes, but PTO, I got to give them a shout out because they've been helping with some of that stuff along the way. We've started pre-K planning meetings again, talking with Rhonda Fortin and Julie Meltzer regularly, and we're looking to try to bring together a committee that we started with last spring, and then that got shut down. So we're looking to kind of reinvigorate that and get that going again in hopes of pre-K being able to pass through with the budget. We want to have our ducks in a row if that does happen. And there's a lot that has started up recently. There's a lot of meetings that have started happening thanks to the early releases on Thursdays. But there's collaboratories that have started happening as well. And Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's 4 collaboratories happening right now. Tremont has staff members on 3 of them. And I listed those there: the civil discourse, trauma-informed practices, and then restorative practices. And I'm participating in the restorative practices one, and I'm super excited about that because that's just very much in line with my personal leadership philosophy in helping to support students and discipline and that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to do that work and to do that with some other staff members from Tremont. We just wrapped up the first semester. We're in the process of, it's crazy to think, but we're in the process of starting our transitioning plans for 8th graders moving up to the high school. They met today with Mark Harrigan from the high school and kind of got an overview and introduction of all things high school related. And then we'll be lining up their individual transition meetings within the next few weeks after coming back from break. And that just blows my mind every year. It kind of catches me off guard that we're at that point and that we're sending another round of kids off to the high school. So the early release Thursdays, I just want to let folks know those are being used in really critical ways here. There's so much happening during that time that I'm like double booked almost the entire 3 hours. So I'm personally trying to pop in and out of meetings, but those Thursday afternoons are just jam packed with talking about students, looking at data, planning for what teachers need to plan across content areas and grades, and pods and all of these different things. So I just can't reiterate enough how valuable that time has been this year and how well used it is in our buildings. We've had just, even today, just such rich conversations around things like process for referrals and whether or not that's really the route we need to go, or looking more closely at the RTI that's taken place and creating documents to track that RTI and make sure that we've done our due diligence before we move on to a referral process. And it's just been incredibly valuable. We are in the NWEA testing window right now. So that's this year. We typically test students this time of year that are below the 50th percentile or have shown that they're below the 50th percentile. And this year we decided, because it's been such an interesting year, we wanted to assess all students, grades 3 through 8 in both math and reading. And so we're trying to wrap that up this week. And we do have the week after break, if we need to, can be used for, thank you, Julie, could be used for makeups if need be as well. This has been a tight window with the return to school as remote learning after the break, and then trying to get this in before February break. It made a really tight window, and that was, I believe, extended a little bit so that we have that week after break. But we're hoping to get as much in this week so we don't have to revisit it again after the break. So, and then February break next week. Some staffing updates. Our speech pathologist, Kate Philbrook, who's been with us, I think she was with us for about 1.5 years. She did just resign her position. We knew that was coming, but so she's resigned. And we did advertise for that position. However, we did not have any luck. I have received a few inquiries since then, but we ended up contracting with an online therapy service called .com Therapies, and we've been able to start those therapies up again within the last couple of weeks. There was a nice transition process that took place, and then there's the transition of case management and all that kind of stuff. So it took a little bit of time, but we were able to get those services up and running pretty seamlessly. But I would prefer in the spring really to take a look at that in-person service again. And I'd like to re-advertise again in the spring and see if we can get, it's really important. I think we've seen across the board that the best things happen when we're in person with students. So I'd like to try to make that happen for speech services again in the spring. One of the other things that I just want to mention, and I think would be great to have as part of discussion around the budget, is in looking at numbers for students. If we had everybody come back in person next year, which I hope we do, and possible additions to students who are being homeschooled this year, or students who might be coming in and predicted kindergarten numbers for next year. We're going to have a bubble of students that are going to move through 3rd and 4th grade next year. And typically we would only have 2 3rd and 4th grade classrooms. If we have to do any physical distancing next year, even 3 feet of physical distancing, I don't think we're going to be able to fit the numbers of students in 3rd and 4th grade in those 2 classrooms that I'd like, because we're looking at somewhere close to 35 students, 32 to 34 students. Even if you divide that in half, those classrooms are going to be incredibly tight, even at 3 feet of distancing. So there's a good chance, if all things have to remain similar to this year, we would still need 3 classrooms. And I really think we need to consider the possibility of an additional 1-year position for a classroom teacher, so that Allison Putnam can go back to teaching music and gifted and talented, and that Michelle Lear can return to literacy intervention, and that we can kind of resume some more normalcy here in the building, but still make sure that we're able to follow whatever requirements we need to at that time. So you will not see that reflected in tonight's budget, that because Mark and I had this conversation and we wanted to make sure the board could have good conversation about that before it was placed in the budget. So that will come back up again in the budget discussion, I hope. I've been working with our food service staff and Susan in our office. We have taken a look at just different ways that we can increase food service revenue and try to bring down that fund balance that we've seen. So we're trying out some, looking closely at the menus, trying to focus on things that are more kid friendly, and are preparing surveys to go out to students, staff, and parents just to get a little bit more feedback and help shape that. We also have had a new air handler system was put in a couple of rooms in the community center. So what is our occupational therapy room, the nurse's office, and the music room, because they have windows, but they didn't have great air exchange, and even the windows are older windows. And so we just, with CRF funds, were able to make sure that that was able to happen this year. So that was installed recently. Something else that I think is just really important, and I know that this is not just being talked about at Tremont, is we're in a pretty dire situation looking for bus drivers, and you are all receiving my emails about this. So I just want to make sure that the board is really aware that there is a need in our district to address the transportation and see what we could possibly do, even to work together to try to help each other out sometimes, because this is pretty significant right now. I do want to give a shout out to a couple of staff members here, Amanda McLaughlin, Kelsey Squires, Ann Lee, and even Bob Williams, who have been volunteering recently. The vans that we have purchased have been absolutely invaluable. We use them daily. We're helping to transport students who might need that for various reasons. And they have been wonderful in stepping up to help out with that. There's some other, I'm gonna kind of keep us moving, but there's some wellness updates. I've added a few things here just to try to provide you folks with a little bit more transparency. But I'll let you read through some of those on your own. I do want to recognize Elaine Eaton, who's living in several different worlds right now and helping us out while Miss Meehan is out on maternity leave. I also want to just recognize Nancy and Susan for their help in the budget process, because they are, I couldn't do this without both of them. Also Eliza Ramos, who was just brilliant in the AOS board meeting, a former Tremont student who represented the anti-racism task force and was just stellar the other night. I was so proud of her. And the Wildcats co-ed basketball team, which has just recently won 3 games in a row and is really killing it this year. So super proud of them. There's a PTO update there too. We're doing a Connected with Kindness activity that will be wrapped up tomorrow. And there's more information around that there as well. And then there's the student activities updates that I'll let you guys look over on your own right now. So that's it. And I'm winded and I I could really use like a lozenge at the end of this. So I'm just going to take a drink. And if you have any questions, let me know.
On the food service fund balance, is that because all meals are free? So is it that people aren't selecting to have the meals at school, or that there's unpaid bills? Or
So we've actually been able to pay down. We've had a lot of donations this year, people who specifically have wanted to help with that. And so most of our unpaid bills have been taken care of for this year. So, and keep in mind that what we're seeing for the fund balance is actually from last year. So we're seeing it reflected this year, but it actually has to do with last year. And so there isn't anything that we can change about that at this point, except to try to increase revenue and increase the number of people who are taking lunches here at school. And Nancy has been willing to work with me too, but right now is not the time to ask Nancy to dive deeply into one more thing until budgets settle down a little bit more and other grants and a variety of things are settled. So I will eventually meet with Nancy to look more closely at that. And we're trying to focus just in the building right now on what we could do to increase revenue and get more kids to participate and even more staff to participate. So that's what we're trying to do, but you wouldn't see that, like it wouldn't be reflected until we're able to take a look at how we end this year and even next year. So it's something that like you'll have to see over time and over several years as to how that is impacted. But essentially the fund balance that you see is a reflection of accumulation over a couple of years. But the jump last year was pretty significant. It was like not 9,000 the year before, and now it's 19,000. And so there's a lot of possible reasons. We're not the only school that has seen a shift like that. And so Nancy has, again, she said that she'd be willing to look more closely at that because she has some ideas as to why that might be. But part of what we really want to try to do is just get more kids to participate. And like you said, right now, we're actually getting reimbursed at a higher rate right now than what we would have been if everybody was paying for their meals. So hopefully that will help us out in the long run. But again, you won't see that reflected until a while from now. I would like to ask Nancy at some point if I can get that information more frequently, but I do not want to put one more thing on her plate at the moment.
no, don't do that.
I love her and I want to keep her around, so I will be kind to her. So that is that's the extent of my report at that point. Hi, Heidi.
Hey guys.
Hello,
Nice.
Heidi.
Sorry I'm late.
We're just
No
glad you're here.
problem.
So we just finished principal's report and I was just asking if there were any questions.
So I do have a question about the staffing update.
Mhm.
So Liberty, she will be in that group, and even if there isn't any distancing guidelines in place, having that third classroom, I cannot tell you the difference that it will make for these kids. And I know you guys know that. So I guess my question is, what is the difference from like the 1-year teaching position as opposed to like a long-term sub?
So like a 1-year teaching, well, it could look similar because it could look similar. It might be somewhat the same. So there are typically a 1-year sub, like a substitute may not come with like benefits in that whole package. So Julie, you can speak a little bit more to it as well, but a 1-year position would come with a contract and a more full package is my understanding. But Julie, I'll let you speak to that too if there's more you want to add.
Well, it's just that that a sub is a sub for an actual position, and there wouldn't be a substitute for somebody who's actually has a position right now. So it would need to be a 1-year
position.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you
Fair
see
enough.
that, like,
Sorry, semantics. You're right. Yeah, that's it. This would be creating a third and fourth grade classroom teaching position, and then we get into again the issue of space. So that is something that if anybody wants to sprinkle any more money from outside of the school system to us, so that would be lovely in terms of maybe us being able to, I know nobody wants to even revisit the idea of any kind of structure outside of this building, but we're going to be desperate, I think, next year for space. So that may be a conversation we need to come back to. If there are any other funds that come towards Tremont, might be the idea of some additional classrooms that might need to be added in some fashion. Because I think that, again, we've had the conversation about the additional like sunroom teacher, and that would need a classroom as well. And then we're talking about another third and fourth grade classroom for a year. So, and then I'm hoping that beyond next year, you know, we're not working under these same circumstances. And in middle school, I don't think we would see this same problem. Once you can get one half of that group to move up and the numbers shift in terms of enrollment in that classroom, then you won't have that bubble anymore. But we just have a pretty decent size third grade this year that will be in fourth grade. And then the potential for about 15 to a few more than that coming into from second grade. So it will just, again, Heidi, one of the things that I put in there under staffing that I've spoken with Mark about is the possibility of a 1-year teaching position that we just looking at the numbers for next year, there's a bubble that's going to move through third and fourth grade. And I don't think we're going to be able to fit all of those kids in 2 classrooms, which means I'd really like to not have to pull teachers who that's not their specialty, that's not their area of expertise necessarily to be teaching third and fourth grade. I'd like to let the specialists go back to their specials. But that might mean that I would need to then add another teaching position. And that is not currently reflected in the additional items because Mark and I decided we really wanted this board to be able to talk about that before we made any changes to any additional items. So.
Well, luckily, like we present our unvoted budget next week to the selectmen. So we can always, you know, gauge how they feel about our current budget. And that's something that we can add in our next meeting as well, in our next conversation, if that's what we find that we're really needing to do.
I would want to be real transparent with them there too.
Let them know. Yep. Let them know that it's a possibility.
I told Chris that we weren't sure if there would be any changes because he's sending his packet out to the select board today. And so I just told him that we weren't sure if there would be any changes that would need to take place after this meeting. So we would send him the budget tomorrow that he could then share out with the select board. So Julie, oh, sorry, Heidi, you go.
So I just want to say that there are 6 students from Tremont that are in the virtual academy who are registered through Tremont. Mm-hmm. Then there are the students who are homeschooling this year only. Mm-hmm. And there are 20 second graders right now, right? Who are in person.
Our number for second graders has actually dropped. I think it's either 14 or 16. But if you look at kids that are either in virtual academy or homeschooled right now, then it creates a larger group. For both third and fourth grade. So it's over 30 students. I can't remember if it was 32 or 34, but it's over 30 students that we would be looking at. And to try to fit that in a classroom where in a normal year, you would probably, you would put student desks together so that they were creating a table or a group of students. If you can't do that, we're going to be hard pressed to fit 15 plus kids in a classroom in those 2 classrooms. It will be very snug in there. So you would really need to strip a classroom almost bare in order to make that happen at this point. So
yeah, I wasn't trying to belabor the point. I just wanted to point out that the numbers that you're showing are, if that's all you're looking at, it doesn't tell the whole story. That's all I was saying.
That's true. If you look at what's there are some students that are not necessarily listed there. So it will create a pocket. So even on here right now, we would have 28 students. Like if you're looking at, excuse me, our second and third grade this year brings us to 31, and that does not include anybody that might be virtual or homeschooled currently. So it will be a decent sized group. Everybody else, I think that we can navigate in their current classrooms. I've looked at numbers and considered who are the students that are not currently in the building that would be hopefully coming back. I think we can navigate everything else. And be, next year I anticipate that we would, if we had to, it might not be that everybody is 6 feet apart. It might be that students are a little bit closer, but maybe they're eating in the cafeteria in a different way. We would think more creatively and have to shift some of the ways that we're doing things to maintain the safety guidelines, but to make sure that we can fit everybody in there. It's just third and fourth grade that I'm not sure we will be able to, even unless we're like, I don't know, putting kids on the ceiling. So
I know they wouldn't mind that.
no, they'd love it. Who are we
Yeah.
kidding?
I just have 2 more questions, or just my question: when you say all specials, does that mean Mrs. Mahoney gets her library back, or is it still going to be a classroom?
I don't want to make any promises because if we're looking at a SUN program and an additional, something is going to give. We don't have the space in this building to be able to, we would have to steal from something. So it would either have to be specialists or a library, or Miss Raymond has not had her art room back. So I want to try to consider she hasn't had her art room all year. So I'd like to try to consider some equity to be able to let her have her art room back. So that might mean then we would then be looking for 2 additional spaces. And so I just don't want to make any promises because I don't know if it would be library, if we would have to shift another room, but we'd have to displace things and potentially people if that's the case next year. So again, if there were any additional funds that rained down upon us, that might be a conversation that we would need to have is, would some additional classroom space, either mobile or portable or something, would be necessary.
This is where we all hope for the vaccines to be distributed.
We should, not to get into it now, and hopefully it'll, come up in subcommittee updates, but these spatial issues do point to the need for us to resume our conversation about middle school and pre-K spaces as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Jandria for her principal's report? All right. Did you guys do the approval of minutes?
Yeah, Heidi, hi, it's Mark, and I apologize. I had to step away for an emergency call. Everything's okay, but I'm glad you're joining us. But yes, we did that, and public comment. I had nothing, and
I had nothing either.
So, and I apologize for stepping away.
Oh, that's quite all right. So we'll go right into subcommittee updates. I know that the policy committee met. I wasn't able to be at that meeting. And are there any other subcommittees right now meeting, Mark?
Well, so yes is the short answer. I mean, you have anti-racism task force, and we're getting regular updates from that. You mentioned policy, and we gave that update at AOS, but I can answer any questions. Heidi, I don't think there's anything else right now that I'm aware of. If I'm missing something, Julie, I don't know if there are any updates that you have. I just don't want to leave anything out, but that's all I'm aware of at this time, Heidi.
Heidi, there's those other conversations going on, but those aren't particularly a committee.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so I guess we can go right into the discussion for the budget. Nancy sent out the budget today with just the 2 additional items. I was pretty comfortable with it, considering we have, negotiations line for that. We have the increase for insurances and stuff like that. but like we talked about last meeting, those two additional items were extremely important and necessary. Did anybody have any other questions about the budget or thoughts?
Heidi, I just want to point out there that there are 3 additional items. It's just that we have not heard yet back a figure on the nursing contract. So that figure isn't factored in there yet. I talked to Mark again and Nancy. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a significant figure because we're not talking about like doubling the amount of time or anything. But so that is not reflected in there yet. And I did double check on the fire alarm and temp monitor and whatnot with Susan. And we've got at least $13,000 right now that could cover that and potentially even more than that. So that will be able to be taken care of out of this year's budget.
Mark?
Heidi, thank you. Just gonna offer this for consideration and just for what it's worth. But as I was listening to Jandria's principal report and all the other things, I just want to say how proud I am of her and her teachers and her staff. And as she went on and she started to talk about the needs and the advocacy, I think this budget, if you look at it on the face, Jandria has done a remarkable job working with Nancy and Julie and others to keep costs down, but also reflect the needs of the students. And you know, the board is aware of it, the community is aware of it. There's going to be trends where the needs of students are going to continue to grow, and we're going to have more students at Tremont, and that's a good thing. I think it's important for the board, and I know you're talking about this, but just as a segue to really plan thoughtfully forward in terms of what the community and what the board really want in their school. We are out of space. We are out of classrooms. We're compromising really the quality of what we can provide with the people that we have in our schools and our students' needs. And that's no one's fault. It's just a function of growth. And growth is a good thing. So I hope we think about that. I would say this, the board has done a remarkable job with their reserve accounts. They are very, very healthy right now. And there are needs at the school, but as you know, and Jandria and I have talked very openly and thoughtfully about this, the cosmetic pieces, if growth were going to be stagnant or reducing, we might want to look at things like you know, doing a whole lot of things with major paving projects and things of that nature. But I really think we need to look long-term and look at the data in terms of enrollment and growth. And I hope Jandria would agree there's some things that we want to possibly put on hold for the long term and navigate through the maintenance reserve right now. And also consider just the other impacts of carry forward. And we've talked a lot about that too. So without belaboring the point, I just want to give kudos to Jandria and respectfully suggest that this is a very lean budget in terms of supporting our students and our teachers at this point. But the things that Jandria is bringing forward to the board, the advocacy for pre-K, the advocacy for student needs and those areas, I completely support. And I also think that for anybody that's looking at this closely, you know, say, well, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic and things are tight for everyone. Yes, they are. But I think, you know, she's kept a weather eye on the finances while looking out for what is best for kids. So sorry, but thanks for letting me share that, Heidi.
So, you know, on another, and I know it's not budget related, but it kind of is. When we talked about last time about building a subcommittee, a task force or whatever to look at, you know, expanding the building. I only heard back from 2 people, one board member and one member of the staff. And Sarah Hinckley did send me out an email, and I will be respond. But I wanted to wait until after this meeting to make sure everybody's still on board. They still want to go forward with that committee. And you know, I just wanted to give everybody the time to think before we really, you know, dive into this project. Any thoughts on that?
I'm definitely on board with that subcommittee, Heidi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing too, Heidi, I think once we kind of go ahead and give the go ahead, I wonder what kind of recommendations can, because I know there might not have been that many community members that came forth, but there are definitely people that are interested,
Yeah,
and
that's
I could
what
see
they're
if we
interested
could
in.
personally ask some people who'd be great to help and just share their opinions and be part of that committee, because I'm sure there's more people out there that would very much like to be involved.
Well, there will be parameters. You know, it's not going to be like the middle. Like I said before, it's not going to be like the middle school. It's going to, you know, we need to know what for our community is going to be important, and that's what this task force. And there will, like I said, there will be parameters in some direction, so that, you know, I don't want people to think that they're not being heard if they throw out ideas. You know, and I just want to make sure that it's thoughtful. Okay. Hold on. What was I going to say? And like I said, Sarah Hinckley, she's going to help me get that out there to the community. I didn't want to do anything until I talked to you guys again as a group, and make sure this is really where we want to go. Because once we start this, there'll be a lot of media, there'll be a lot of talk about it, and there'll be a lot of talk from other boards and parents from other communities as well, because we are having that other middle school discussion. So we do need to be cognizant of that. So. Yeah, Carrie.
First of all, I just want to apologize for being late. I had this on my calendar 6 o'clock and had to move mountains to just find a place to sit so that I'm not in my car while Aaron
I was late too. I couldn't get here in time.
So I'm sitting in the Connors Emerson Library, and that's why I have to wear a mask. But anyway, as far as expanding the school or building an addition or anything, one concern that I just wanted to bring up was I read something recently about the Tremont School being one of the top concerns of municipal buildings that might be impacted by climate change if there's sea level rise. So that is certainly a concern for me to put more money into that site if that is truly an issue in the next 10 to 20 years. And then the question that I had for you was, is there a minimum number of board members that need to serve to have a subcommittee? Because I would think that we would need at least 2.
Well, so we cannot have 3 school board members on any said committee, because 3 makes a quorum. So we would only be able to have 1 or 2. We could not have 3. And it's like that for any committees, because you just can't have a quorum. Like the middle school subcommittee, there were only so many board members that were able to be there because you couldn't have a quorum, because then it would be counted as a meeting, and there would be voting rights for that. So we do have to be careful about that. My thought was 1 or 2 board members, K4, 5-8, a specialist, special ed, and then a couple, maybe 3 community members. And I would like to see one of the selectmen. I mean, it's something that I was going to bring up on Monday at the, or is it Monday or Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday, the selectmen's meeting. You know, just to offer them that option. But I would only want one selectman, you know, just to have, you know, the bigger it gets, the harder it is to work through anything. You know, I saw that this summer when we had our return to school task force. You know, you have all these people that are broken down into these groups, and it's really hard to work together. So I'd like to keep it a little bit tighter, but staying within parameters with some guidance and direction. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Jessica, did you have a question too?
Well, a comment and a question. Oh, one was to say that I think that it would be really important that this committee coordinate closely with the middle school committee, because it's kind of like make sure those 2 carts are moving in tandem. And then I had just a budget comment to say that I think this is really an amazing budget that gets in a lot of incredible things for the kids. Like it's a great return on investment, you know, like for most people, they're getting, even with the additional items, for most of us, we'd be paying, you know, $60 or $100 more on our taxes, and we'd be getting a pre-K program and, you know, expanded with the nurse and an additional teacher. Like, I just think it's a great bang for our buck, in my opinion. That's all I want to say about that.
And I do have to say that Jandra and her whole staff have done a really good job the last couple of years, working hard on their budget, making sure that there's not those additional costs. Even when it comes to training for the teachers, they've been extremely thoughtful with the programs that they've been involved in. So I give kudos to Jandra and the whole staff at Tremont for how responsible they've been the last couple of years, even before COVID. The last 2 or 3 years, they've been really amazing with it, but with budgeting. So thank you, Jandria, and thank you to your staff.
Thank you.
Roger?
And I agree. I mean, I think the budget's great. And so not my next comment, you don't take it out of context, but we've probably covered this, but just to play devil's advocate, the special ed teacher edition, could that come out of the reserves, or is that's not how that works?
The reserves are set up, and Mark can probably speak to this more so, but the reserves are really there for things that kind of blindside us or come out of the blue, like more emergency type things. But like you've been involved with those funds before. You may remember 2 years ago.
I do. Thank you for reminding me. That's what I thought. I could just, as devil's advocate, I see that might come up from somewhere.
Mark, add to that.
So may I, Heidi?
Yeah.
So Roger, you bring up a really good point. The short answer is yes, you could do that. But these accounts are set up for unanticipated major. This would be, for example, typically an out of district placement type of thing, not students that we know their IEPs. In short, it would not be prudent to do that. Now, I will say this about your special ed reserve. You're in a great position because you have an ample balance there, and some of our member schools would kill to have that type of balance. And you also, I think the board knows this, but you have another backup to that, which is an AOS special ed reserve if you had to access that. And you'd have to exhaust that $242,000 before you did that. So, I mean, I think given what we know now, this is what I would say to that. Could you do it? Yes. Might you do it? Maybe. But given the carry forward you have and how the board chooses to use that strategically, and the other areas, if this is a good budget with healthy reserves, and so I would advise not going that route and considering the recommendation of Jandria to include the additional teacher, but not use any of the reserves to fund it. If the finances change in the next fiscal year, that recommendation may shift. Sorry. Go ahead, Jandria.
Hold on.
No, go ahead.
Jandria, can I just chime in real quick, Roger, about that? So we have had to go to the selectmen before for positions, and we've said, we've had to go to bat for special ed. It's just something we have to cover. It's state law. That is our responsibility. And, if we dip into a reserve for something, it sets a precedent going forward where the selectmen would be like, meh, if there were some questions. And I don't necessarily want to set that precedent right now. So putting this in the budget, it's being transparent, it's being fiscally responsible, because this is our responsibility as a public school to cover that cost. So, Jandria, sorry.
No, all I was going to say is, Mark, I appreciate you advocating for that position again. There's a chance things could shift and maybe we would end up with fewer numbers in that position in third and fourth grade for next year, but I'm nervous about that, and I don't want to be scrambling last minute to find space and somebody to cover that and then have to pull a specialist again this year. So I just would like to be able to leave this meeting with direction as to how you want to do that.
I add one thing to that, Heidi and Jandria, please.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jandria is being very prudent and very wise. If you think about this, putting in a teaching position when we know the needs of our students is a very good thing to do. But if you also, secondary to that, if you look at the financial implication, if she's wrong, the money doesn't get spent. And I don't think she's going to be wrong. But if that magnifies, she's going to be coming to the board asking for additional educational technicians, 1, 2, maybe 3. And
Which
if you
we
do
had to do in the past, which we
it costs you a lot
Right.
more.
And that would be a lot more money.
It's a hard thing after the fact to have to try to scrounge and find that support somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to be real clear that what, like, I am asking, we have that additional sun position in there. I would like us to really consider that 1-year position as well, adding that in as an additional item. And I just would need direction as to how you want to do that. If you guys want to try to do something like that and have Nancy amend the budget before it goes to the select board. If you want, Heidi, you had mentioned talking to the select board first. And I could just be very transparent with them about the fact that this is a significant, I really do anticipate that's going to be a need that we're going to have next year, because I don't think we're coming back to not wearing masks and not having to have any distance. But again, I could be wrong. So I just would love the direction that the board would like me to go in for that additional position that is not currently in there as an additional item.
So I guess I would like to open up and just kind of, get everybody's feeling about how they feel the budget is currently and about that extra position. There's a couple things we can do. We can leave the budget as is, go to the selectmen next week. This is a possibility. And then when we come back next month, go ahead and amend that and vote on that. Or we could add that position in now and bring it to the selectmen and see what they say, see what their thoughts are. And then we can come back and have another discussion. I don't know how you guys feel, what you want to do, what you're comfortable with. I think that this budget that they presented is great. I do. I think it's responsible. I think it's fair for the needs that we have that we're responsible for. So we're gonna, be able to help other kids with the pre-K and help our school in the long run with education and behavior issues. And the other stuff is mandatory for us. So I would, why don't I just go along and see how everybody individually feels about the budget, okay? And we don't have to vote on anything tonight, but if we have an idea of what we want to do, we can go back to Nancy and say, okay, this is what we want to amend for the selectmen. So I'll start with Jessica Bass, since you're up there on that corner.
You're muted, Jessica.
I know, I fixed it. I think my first thoughts are definitely, I'm in a position where at this point, the school has been such a valuable asset for us during this pandemic. And I think it highlighted how important it is to continue to support our teachers, our staff in our school, because we need our kids there, not home. That's for sure. I think we got rid of a lot of additional items, especially the cosmetic stuff. And I'm not opposed to putting it in before the additional position before going to the selectmen. But at the same time, they're not looking for a final draft either. They're just kind of like, hey, what are we looking at? What can we kind of anticipate? So I'm not opposed to just us saying, hey, this is where we're at right now. Most likely there's going to be another position added onto here, but what are your thoughts here? Because if they're okay with it, I think we took a lot of, if you look at the other additionals that we did have and the work that we already put in or took out from what we were originally thinking, we're in a good spot. We're in a good spot. And like I said, it's not a final draft. They know that. They're going into this knowing that there might be some changes before we say, hey, it's officially approved. So I'm okay with just letting it, especially where it's only just Tuesday. It's not that far away. Let's give ourselves a little breather and then hear what they have to say.
Okay. Carrie Hayes.
Well, I feel a little sheepish that I missed most of the discussion of it. So I'm already behind the 8 ball in looking at these things new to the board this year. But everything that I do see, I think it looks great. Can I just clarify? Are you saying from the additional items at the bottom that the pre-K program is built in, but the Sun additional special ed is not? Am I understanding that?
No, so the pre-K position, the Sun position, and the increase to the nurse's contract, those hours, that figure is not in there yet because we haven't received that figure yet. So the 2 items that are factored in there are the pre-K program and then the additional Sun teacher. We will get the figure for the nursing contract, and then what I'm asking to add in there is an additional classroom teaching position.
Oh, okay. That's the part
For 1 year.
Okay. So we're looking at this $32 per 100,000 valuation before that extra teacher.
Yes.
Is that right? In green at the very bottom on line 333 about?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel really strongly that that pre-K program is important. And I know that's a big chunk of where that additional money on the valuation comes in. And, you know, we're in crazy times right now. So we have to expect, I mean, I agree with what everybody said, that it just looks like a really streamlined budget. So I would certainly support going forward with it.
Roger?
I agree. I mean, I think the budget looks great. You know, notwithstanding my other comments, I think it's wonderful. I think it shows a, you know, good, strong, conservative fiscal approach. I guess my question would be, and I would defer to some of the board members that have been around longer and talk to the select board, is like, my preference might be to see that teacher position in, Jandria, if you really think you're going to need it. I wouldn't be opposed to having that in there, at least as a placeholder, or, you know, just to be prepared to know what those numbers are at the select board meeting, to know what that increase might want to be, because we're also going to have an increase potentially from the nursing contract from the school as well. So coming in with a budget that goes up, you know, a couple percentages or 3%, I don't know how the select board might see that on the next version, you know, come in with this one and then goes up on the next one. So
Mark?
Heidi, Roger, that we can have that stuff, no problem. I think Jandria probably already knows that number, but we're going to budget or project a mid-range master's level with a family plan. That'll be the number. And the nursing contract, the hours, that will be easy for us to figure. So we can have both those numbers. Jandria, I didn't put too much on you there, did I?
No, I don't think so at all. And I think to be honest with you, I think that Sun additional teacher is probably a pretty equivalent figure to what you would see, because that's how Nancy would have figured that same. So you're probably looking at that number. And then I don't have an estimate for what the nursing, because I don't handle the nursing contract. So I don't know what that figure would look like.
I don't think it's going to be a significant number.
No, I don't think so either.
I wouldn't want to throw a number at it, but the value for the dollars will be amazing. But I think it's safe to say that we're probably looking, what'd you say, Jandria, about a 5-hour per week increase? Is that approximate? Okay.
Yeah, that's really, that might even be slightly more than what we're talking about in hours. I just want to make sure that the length of the workday actually matches the contracted hours.
And that brings our nurse in Tremont in line with the majority of the nurses in the district. And in truth, we're trying to work to have full-time nurses in all of our schools. Is that correct, Jandria?
Yeah, I personally would love to see that our nurses could all have a similar contract, because I think that we're all many of our schools are similar in size. You know, Tremont is not that much different than Trenton and Pematic and whatnot. So I think that there's a messy history as to how we ended up with all different contracts and different amounts of hours. And I don't know all of that history, but I can tell you that the nurses have never worked harder in their entire lives in our schools than they have this year. And we're not just talking about during the work week. I mean, we're on the phone significant amounts of time over the weekends, over vacations, the amount of time that they are putting in, the increase to hours that contract would reflect next year would not be equivalent to the amount of time that is being worked this year, and probably will be worked next year too. So, you know, contractually, I think it's the right thing to do, to at least make sure that what it would look like in a normal year is reflected in the contract. And that is not the case right now. What has been worked for hours in the past does not reflect what the contract actually stated. So I'd like to just make it like, if we're considering a typical year without COVID, the number of hours that would be for a full-time position, I just would like to see that contract reflects that. But I do not want to discount the amount of time and energy that is being put in by our nurses right now, because they do not take this lightly at all. And they're really going above and beyond right now.
Jessica Stewart, I never got your perspective. How do you feel about the budget?
I like the budget, as I already said, and I would be in favor of going ahead and discussing the 1-year position with the select board, because I just think it makes more sense, particularly if other people, you could persuade me otherwise, but particularly if we explain that like last minute hiring of a whole bunch of ed techs and so forth is going to cost a lot more money. I think they're reasonable people and they're going to understand, like, we have this number of children in the building with this number of needs and we have to cover that, and that going ahead and planning now to hire, the sun position plus this 1-year position is a much more better educationally and budget conscious way to handle it than scrambling around to hire a zillion ed techs at the last minute. And I think they'll understand that.
Kendra?
So I have this version right now that doesn't have that stuff plugged into it. What I could do is ask Nancy to plug those 2 figures in and then give me that version. And then we have both versions with and without to be able to share. So I could do that if that makes sense as well. I mean, either way, I think we're debating putting those numbers in anyway. So I could do that and then we could show both versions.
Well,
Yes, I think that makes sense.
we could do that. So if we presented 2 different budgets, one with and one without that extra position, and that would give the explanation to an increase if that's what we decide to do the next time we meet, and they would know then already what the increase would be to the bottom line and the taxes. So I think that's a good idea. I do think that they'll be supportive. I would hope that they would be supportive. I mean, this is only going to benefit the kids. And like Jessica said, hiring several ed techs is not very economical. It's financially irresponsible as far as I'm concerned, unless it was absolutely needed last minute kind of, I've seen that happen and it's hard. It's a hard thing because when you're scrambling in the middle of a year for an ed tech, you don't find quality people either. It's easier to plan for a position, for a year-round position, for a year-long position than it is in the middle of a school year where everybody's already got their jobs that are quality people to come in for a part of a year on an ed tech salary.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I would also just add, like, all of these additional items directly impact students. So there isn't anything on there that isn't directly tied to student needs. Like the paving, that's great, but it's not directly tied to how it's going to impact students. So all of these things, including the nurse's contract, is directly impacting students. So there's not any other fluff in there, and not that those other items are fluff. They have to do with the facilities. They don't have to do with directly impacting students. So yeah, I will talk to Nancy and ask her if we can plug those 2 figures in there and then just get that version. So I will make sure that we have this version and that version.
You guys are all comfortable with that. I'll look at a head nod. Are you guys comfortable with the 2 versions? Okay. All right. I think that's a good way to go.
Okay, perfect. I will take care of that.
Okay. Any other budget questions or concerns? Yeah, Jessica Bass.
Not so much a question, but more of just kind of echoing what's already been said. We don't really get to talk and advocate for our school with the selectmen very much. So I think having that second budget to be able to have that conversation, to plant this, hey, we have a lot of kids, we're going to need more teachers. And then it kind of helps us segue into the whole, and we need more space. Yeah. And I'm not saying we should take that opportunity, but just to have that opportunity of saying, hey, our school's growing, our students, there's more kids now, and we need to accommodate that. Just planting this idea now, so that way when we are having these committee reports and there's a selectman involved, it gives us just a more ground to say, hey, this is where we're at and we need support.
And I think offering to the selectmen to be a part of that task force is really going to hit home to them about our needs going forward with space. So I think that'll address that in a very careful way.
Yeah. An opportunist.
I don't remember what I was just going to say, so skip to Mark.
Heidi, just on that note, and just listening to you folks, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. Before I came to this area, when we were doing the middle school project in Westbrook, building the Westbrook Middle School, And that facility is phenomenal. But the real champion for that project became one of the city councilors who served on the task force and saw the need. And it was, so I think that's really key, to have all your stakeholders involved. So just as an observation, I really makes me feel good to hear you say that, because I've seen the success of that in other projects involving not just the select board, but other members of the community. Thanks.
I'll go back to Jandra before I go back to you, Carrie, okay? I think she remembered what she was gonna say.
Yeah, to Jessica's point, I just wanted to add, so I believe that they've heard that before, like in the past. I think we've talked about the need to consider this building and what happens with it moving forward. So, and I certainly, I intend to be transparent about that as I present this on Tuesday, to just make sure that that is something that is really clear, because I don't ever want us to get to a point where people are feeling like they haven't heard that or they didn't know that this was going to be a need. So I certainly will advocate for that and just make sure that we're real transparent about what our needs look like in this building right now.
All right, Carrie?
I just wanted to clarify when that meeting is with the select board, so I can make sure to go or get on and be supportive.
It's Tuesday at 6, correct, Jandria?
I
Tuesday,
need to double check if it's 6 or 5. I can't remember. So let me just pull up my calendar and I will tell you.
So we're talking about next Tuesday, the 16th?
Tuesday, the 16th at
Right.
5 o'clock.
Okay.
5.
Thank you.
And it's at the town office, Jandria.
Yes, it is at the town office. Chris did set up a Zoom link that could be accessed. I think they typically are in person, but he did create a Zoom link. And so I can just double check with him and make sure that he's okay if more than one person jumps on that could be used by other people who might not feel comfortable or might not otherwise be able to be in person. So I'll be there in person. And I mentioned a little while ago that I'll kind of gauge how comfortable I feel being there in person at that point. So it may be that I'm there to just present the budget, and then I may respectfully step out after I've done that, which I wouldn't normally do, but just given the circumstances, I will certainly be there in person to present the budget, and I'll decide at that point if I stay for the whole meeting or if I scoot out afterwards.
Great, thank you.
Any other budget issues, concerns, comments, questions? All right, so we'll have those 2 different budgets to present to the selectmen on Tuesday. I think that's a really good idea. And I'm excited to see what they have to say and come back and discuss with you guys and get this budget, finalized. So I guess we'll move right past that. And we're gonna get to my.
Sorry, semantics. You're right.
All right. So we'll just move on to action items. We don't have any other business. There's just one other business item that I have to discuss, and that's the end of terms. And my term ends this year, so my seat is up. I am not going to take papers out again. It's time for me. I've done this for I think 11 years now, and it's time for me to concentrate on my future and my career. And I'm looking forward to it. I've spent a lot of years being a mom, being, somebody else's something, and it's time for me to focus on myself, and I'm excited about it. I would not be opposed if nobody ran to staying on for a year in a supportive role, and helping whoever were to, just to help, maybe consult with you guys and help you move forward. There's a lot that goes on that, behind the scenes that not a lot of people know about. And I would be more than happy for, if nobody takes papers out, to stay on for a year to help you guys navigate that year transition. And even if not, if someone were to take papers out, I'd be more than happy to help consult. And, if you guys have questions, I'd be more than happy to help you and support you in that way. The future of Tremont is looking extremely bright, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of the growth that's happened at that school, and seeing the kids and how just seeing them come out of that school and going to high school is amazing. I've seen a lot of classes come through, and I've seen some kids just go from right here to just excelling, and I couldn't be more proud of Jandria and her staff. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that I'm not going to take my papers out and that my seat will be up for election.
Thank you, Heidi, for all your diligent years of service. And yeah, I know everyone is so appreciative for all your commitment.
It was a hard decision to make. I went, this has been a tough year on me personally. No, I don't want to get all choked up. It has been a very tough year for me personally. And I have struggled to make meetings and be a single mom. So, being there for my kids and focusing on myself and my future is really important to me right now. So that's that. And I have gotten no public comment through the meeting. I don't know, Mark, if you have at all.
No, Heidi.
That was a smooth transition, Heidi, by the
Sorry.
way.
Very glad.
So
Very
yeah,
glad.
and I saw the handoff there, so I'm not going there with you. We'll have our time, but no, and there's no additional public comment that I'm aware of, Madam Chair.
All right. So we do have the selectmen's meeting at 5 o'clock on Tuesday. I will be there. I know Jandria will be there. I don't know, Mark, are you going to be able to be there for that, or just?
I'm working like the Dickens. I will be there physically and or virtually, but I will be there.
All right, sounds good. So we'll wait to see what the selectmen have to say. And right now, our next meeting is going to be Thursday, March 11th at 5:30. We'll probably do another virtual meeting. And then, with that, the agenda items, we'll hopefully, we have to vote on the budget at that point, because we'll have to bring it, for warrant articles. That has to be in by a certain time. So we'll have that as an action item. We'll have hopefully the formation of that task force, and as a board, we need to set the parameters for that. That's really important to have it a group effort. I don't want it to be. I just don't want it to run away. I really want it to be focused and responsible and have the kids first. That's what's most important to me, is the kids' education first and foremost, what their needs are. So I think that should be a discussion item next time about, the parameters of this task force. And again, I will respond to Sarah Hinckley, and I'll speak with her about that. And then on Tuesday, I'll also offer it to the selectmen. Okay. Any other comments from board? Yeah, Roger.
So this is kind of a little bit off topic, but since we're on the subject of scheduling meetings, is there any good ways that you guys know that maybe I don't know on how to remember that there's a meeting? Because I get an email a week ahead of time, and then I've got 5,000 emails after that. So.
What I do, I put it on my calendar in my phone, and with my alarm an hour beforehand. That's what I do.
I could send it
That's what I
out
do.
so that there's a calendar invite too. Like I could send a calendar invite to everybody that then would put it in your calendar. And so I'm happy, like we're finishing this meeting up, so I could just jump onto my Google Calendar, plug that in, put all your names in, and then it should pop up in all your calendars for that day. So I'd be happy to do that this evening before we get out of here, if that is helpful.
I've got it in my calendar now, but I know if I don't put it in now, I won't remember. So I was just curious.
We also, Raj, we keep on the website, not that you should have to hunt and seek, but we keep that tally. But Jandria hit the nail on the head. I was going to say we could send out a calendar invite, but yeah, she's all over it.
All right, anybody else? Okay, well, Jessica, how about you started the meeting? So you go ahead and ask for a vote for someone to move to adjourn.
Is there a move? Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That was the slowest ever motion for an adjournment.
Is that Jessica or Carrie? I'm not sure who it was.
That was Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica Bass.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
That.
Okay, Carrie. And do we do a roll call for the adjournment, or? do we
I'm
just do-
sorry, but yes, you do.
Yes. Okay. So, Heidi.
So moved.
Or yes, you're okay, Carrie.
So sorry. It's been a long time since I've done that.
Carrie, do you approve?
I said approve.
Yes. Roger,
Yes.
Jessica Bass.
Approve.
Hey, Mark, I've got a
Okay.
quick question. Does that approval or does that go into the minutes?
You're muted, Mark.
It sounds like a good talk.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Sorry.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all I'm sorry I was late, and it's hard to leave the office sometimes when things have blown up a little bit. So I thank you guys all for being here.